Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing today? Welcome to the WrestleWatch podcast. I am Doug.
And I'm Ryan here.
All right, it's kind of a big week for WrestleWatch. I mean, that's once again, this is the podcast where we look at jumps between major wrestling promotions, talent going from one promotion to the next. We're not a show that focuses on reviewing shows and talking about kayfabe storylines. We're talking about business and specifically the business end of professional wrestling with free agency. And more often than probably more so than any other week, this is one of the biggest weeks for that, with the obvious big news that Mercedes Moné is all elite.
Yeah, it's been rumored for I don't know how long at this point. She's been kind of the big prize for essentially the last 2 years when she her and Naomi walked out at WWE, and it finally came to a head here this week with the big business special episode of Dynamite. They started off pretty much the same way that they started off for the first dance with CM Punk. First thing that they do is bring out Mercedes, let her talk, have some fun. But yeah, that's the big news of it all is that she is officially signed to AEW.
Yeah, this was the big one. I mean, this was an interesting timeline to follow too, just because obviously she left in 2022, correct?
Yes, yeah.
And then she showed up at Wrestle Kingdom, started doing a New Japan Stardom run, was injured in May of 2023, and was out. And then during that time, we didn't know where she was going to go for a while. Obviously, the big one was she popped up at All In the
Mhm.
crowd. But after that, the rumors were that AEW and Mercedes Moné were going to do business together. And then the reports were that they stopped talking. And then
Yeah,
we
yeah.
heard that Mercedes Moné and WWE were talking. And then we
Mhm.
heard that those talks fell apart. And then we heard that she essentially was going to end up in AEW.
Yeah. Around All In, it seemed like that was the time when they were talking about her. They were discussing the terms of the contract and everything. But Tony Khan didn't want to just have Mercedes come out in a walking boot or crutches and say, "Hey, how's everybody doing?" and then not have any storyline, not have any matches. So yeah, as time went on with her being injured, it seemed that WWE was back in the cards. But sometime late in December of 23, it seems that she officially signed with AEW. A couple sources, a couple of reporters, such as on Rossap and Andrew Zarian, were reporting that it seemed that she had signed around that point because they said that she's been getting some paychecks for the past couple months now. So yeah, when the Royal Rumble came around, one of my favorite quotes came out was a WWE source saying that they didn't want to be accused of contract tampering by having Mercedes show up at the Royal Rumble. So yeah, it seems that this has been a set thing for a little while now, but they just wanted to do a big fun show, big surprise announcement kind of a thing. Didn't officially announce that Mercedes was going to be showing up this past Wednesday, but got over 9,000 people to come to the TD Garden and a million people to tune in during her segment. So this is pretty darn big stuff right here.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because only a couple of months ago, we had the report that Charlotte had signed that new WWE deal and was now the
Mhm.
highest paid woman in wrestling in WWE ever.
Yes, we
Um,
got that, and that was at the same time that Bailey re-signed with WWE as well. So it looked like that things were moving in the direction of. That was also when we weren't so sure if Mercedes was going to actually sign with AEW, if she was going to go back to WWE.
yeah, that absolutely. And now we have a situation where the reports are that Mercedes got paid more than that.
Oh
So
yeah, oh yeah. She has been given a lot of money.
yes, she is now I think it's fair to say she's the highest paid woman in all of professional wrestling.
Yeah. The number that we've been hearing is that it's quote unquote considerably lower than the $5 million figure that was going around, which might be exaggerated or kayfabe, kind of like how Okada's number, the 2 billion yen thing is might be kayfabe. Um, but it still is a significant amount of money, and allegedly Tony Khan was offering a lot more than WWE was at that time. There was even one WWE women's star noted that when they heard the number, all the women backstage were pretty ecstatic about it, because of course it means it sets the standard that women should be paid too, and that yeah, you're looking at the numbers that she just did on this debut episode for her, both from ticket sales and from viewership. It really shows that yeah, she should be paid as much as she is. But what it also says is, wow, I wonder what's going to happen when the next round of big name women have their contracts coming up.
Yeah. And I will say this, a lot of people, looked at the rating and thought it was disappointing. That was something that Dave kind of pointed out. I I'll say this, it was lower than I thought it was going to be,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I don't even know how much to make of that anymore. With ratings are so hard to tell. It was the third of the night, uh, and I'm not. I mean, let's be honest. Who is really moving like actual television ratings, like from like a week to week basis like that, like a one giant jump? It's like it's going to be CM Punk returning to wrestling after 7 years,
Hmm.
or someone like The Rock, who's the biggest star in all of professional wrestling or
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah,
So it's
and that's why you see WWE announcing weeks in advance saying like, "Oh yeah, Roman and The Rock are going to be at this show in particular." Because yeah, it helps out for them.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't. I mean, I'll say this: I don't think it would matter if they announced Mercedes is debuting like ahead of time. I don't know that would have made a big difference. Maybe it would have, but ultimately, I think the way they did it was probably the better way to go about it. It made
Hmm.
it a little more interesting, and frankly, I think just based off of social media numbers, she was doing really well. Obviously, ticket sales was a major boost from what AEW had been doing for their TVs lately. So I think
Hmm.
time will tell on Mercedes, but based on what I'm seeing, it looks like this is a slam dunk. I guess we'll
Yeah.
see though.
Yeah, I mean I'm one of the people that I don't think I'm as doom and gloom or as critical as Dave Meltzer was about the strategy. I don't think that they needed to flatly say Mercedes in town or anything like that. I think that what they did was the right strategy, obviously from the results. I do think that if they just did a little bit more teasing, I'm sure that the numbers would have been a little bit better. Because yeah, we didn't have a Monster shirt. We didn't have that level of saying best in the world kind of a thing. But you know what? Like you look at the fact that I think I think it was Brandon Thurston said that first quarter was up 25% from the for the last quarter here. The first quarter of the Dynamite show was up 25% compared to the past couple of weeks' Dynamites for that quarter. So she did have an obvious impact to the ratings for at least that period when people tuned in specifically because she was going to be on the show.
Yeah. And I think and obviously everyone could listen to WrestleNomics and Brandon Thurston and Jesse Collins. They do a fantastic job of breaking that stuff down. We're not going to do that here, but
Mm-hmm.
you can go ahead and listen to them, strongly encourage it. But I think that we want to focus on talking about, what this means in terms of business, and I think in a different way. And I think right now we could look at what AEW has done over the past 3 months or so and looking how they're handling free agency,
Yeah.
because I think you're seeing a lot of similarities. In the last basically 3 months, they secured Mercedes. Well, here they secured Okada first of all, who is a
Mm-hmm.
a first ballot Wrestling Observer Hall of Famer.
Yep.
You have Will Ospreay, who's I would imagine is going to be a first ballot Wrestling Observer Hall of Famer. And then you have Mercedes Moné, who I would probably argue might have the strongest case uh, for an American woman going in that Hall of Fame. And now the reason I'm using the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame as just like kind of a benchmark is just because it's a very hard Hall of Fame to get into. It's a very, and I think it's a good way to quantify exactly how big these free agents are. And these are three very big free agents.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Okada was the kind of the face of New Japan for the past what I would say 5 years at least, maybe 10. You could call him the face of New Japan. So to have him leave Japan first off, and then for him to go to AEW particular, it shows something. Osprey, for that matter, also was speaking about this on the Talk is Jericho podcast of what a major factor for him was being able to stay and live in the UK, because that's a big factor for him is building his family and being able to go back home easily enough and not have to work the kind of schedule that WWE would be demanding of him. Here's a quote from him. Yeah, of course, but it was a night and day, talking about the difference between talking to AEW and WWE. Even in the difference of what they were offering and what AEW was offering, AEW was way better. The scheduling, everything about AEW was completely the right option for me. It was always, you can go to be a superstar in WWE and famous, but it's not as good of pay and it's not as good of a kind of schedule. I respect everyone there doing it, but it's not for me. And I think that that's becoming a major factor, is looking at the money on the one end with AEW and kind of creative freedom or family freedom as well for somebody like Will Ospreay, versus the kind of platform that WWE can give to somebody, the allure of the WrestleMania and those kinds of things.
Yeah. And in terms of Mercedes Moné, she already had the main event at WrestleMania. She already had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those things. And granted, I don't put a lot of stock in what people say in their promos on TV, but I think some of what Moné said was pretty genuine. And the one thing that stood out to me that I don't think a lot of people are spending a lot of time on, I haven't seen much, is her comment where she said AEW is the only place where, this division can be global or something
Mm-hmm.
along those lines. Now, a lot of people might look at that and just say, well, she's just hyping up her own division. Just, this is a PR thing. Obviously you're gonna build it up. But if you really think about it, and you think about what she has demonstrated that is important to her over the last year, going to New Japan, going to Stardom, potentially maybe even going to Mexico with CMLL.
Yeah.
Um, I understand there's an argument to be made that she's absolutely correct in the sense that WWE has been pretty closed off and isn't allowing their talent to really, take all these outside bookings in other places. And if it's important to her that she continue working with New Japan, going to Stardom, maybe even going to Tokyo Joshi Pro or some other partner promotions uh, that AEW has, that could have been a real strong selling point to her. And I think it's not a completely throwaway line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that the line, if I recall, was she had led a women's evolution before, and now in AEW she can help lead a global revolution. Which kind of, hey, we could have been on that pay-per-view 3 weeks ago then.
Yep.
uh, but yeah, speaking to the New Japan factor of it all, in the Fightful report regarding this, they were told that New Japan expects to be factored into this deal with AEW, and that they were under the impression as of January that they would be able to continue to work with Mercedes in a big way. The company hoped that they could pick up where they were last year with her, obviously AEW being priority, but New Japan seems pretty happy about this as well. And also during her promo, she name checked Mexico specifically on a show where later in the night, we know that CMLL is out there with AEW now, scheduling their wrestlers on AEW's programming now. We'll have in, I think it's a week from now, we'll have the big BCC versus CMLL show down in Arena, Mexico. So it seems that, as we said, I think last week we mentioned that Stephanie Vakor won that strong women's championship. Seems that a lot of these pieces, all these cogs, seem like they fit together here.
Yeah, that's definitely where I think they're going with this. I mean, Stephanie Becerra is now the New Japan Strong Women's Champion. That belt was more or less made for Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
It would definitely make sense that that's the direction that they're going, whether that happens in Chicago at Windy City Riot or happens elsewhere. Uh, it's I would not be stunned to see that. Um, and I think that definitely played a role. But at the same time, we saw that this also came down to money, and Okada, Osprey, and Mercedes all took the bigger money deal. And I think that's going to be the case 9 times out of 10 for all these free agents. They're going to look at what's the best deal. I don't think there's going to be some, don't get me wrong. I think for example, I think the one that comes to mind was Dragon Lee. He's someone who
Mm-hmm.
did take a smaller money deal, went to NXT because he thought that he had a better shot at breaking out there. And, you know, time will tell. That may have been the correct move for him. But for a lot of these people, they're just probably going to be taking the bigger money offer. And it's a question to see if WWE is going to start changing their strategy, because right
Yeah.
now their strategy is we have the WrestleMania moment to offer you. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know that may work. That may work for a lot of people, but I don't know that it's going to work for everyone. And we'll see what going forward how that goes, because we still have a lot of free agents opening up over the next year.
Yeah, and I think something to think about with that is to possibly think about the opposite, the counterfactual regarding that. Like for example, for an Okada, one of the factors that some people think was for him was not just about the money, but also the fact that it's his friends, it's his buddies that are in AEW, and if you would go to WWE, he wouldn't necessarily have as many people that he knows there. Now, I'm not sure if, for example, the Elite had left AEW and gone to WWE. I'm not sure if he would necessarily go with the money versus going to work with his compatriots. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. And I think probably one of the funnier quotes I saw with Okada, this is before CM Punk left AEW. They asked him, like, uh, would you work with CM Punk? Okada was asked. He's, I don't know. I'm pretty good friends with the Young Bucks. And that was when they were all in AEW.
Yeah,
So just kind of shows that kind of division that we saw there. And now that Punk went to WWE, I don't know if that necessarily had an impact on him as well. It's like, okay, so my choices are go to WWE with CM Punk or stay with the Young Bucks in AEW. It might have. Uh,
yeah. But yeah, if you
it's
even if
weird.
you I think also if you look at then somebody that might not have as many connections to other people in America, maybe like a Jay White, he went to AEW because they were actually offering him the money. Osprey, he went to AEW because they were offering the money and the schedule that he wanted to have. And now with Mercedes, it's kind of interesting because part of it seems that there's a difference between having the high platform of WWE, of the WrestleMania, of those kinds of the business possible. I'm trying to think of the word. I'm sorry here. Uh, Other things of business work. Look at Jade Cargill just already is in commercials and everything.
Yeah,
Uh,
those
so
third party
the connections.
opportunities.
Exactly. Yes. Sorry. Third party connections. Whereas AEW seems to be having more connections within the wrestling world itself and fostering more of a global initiative.
And I'll say this, I don't know how I'll be honest, I don't know how AEW does with these third party opportunities and outside work and things like that. It's like I feel like it hasn't existed long enough to really tell.
Yeah.
I don't know, because yes, like WWE is obviously the bigger known brand. They have connections. They had connections with Fox that's ending. They have connections with NBCU going back, decades at this point. They're gonna start having connections with Netflix. just with their media partners, but AEW has connections with media partners as well. Obviously with Warner Brothers Discovery, and I don't know how far ahead WWE in actuality is with that. Because
Hmm.
if you take a look at, someone like Becky Lynch, I mean, she's had some side gigs on what Billions, which is a Showtime show, which is okay. I mean, I'm not going to necessarily question the show. I've never seen it, but I understand it's sort of a poor man's Secession. Um, but it's not like we're seeing these incredible breakout roles for them. In fact, a lot of times we haven't seen that until they actually left WWE, like Batista or
Yeah.
John Cena. And I don't know how much being in WWE really played a role in there in that, but I think that's a discussion maybe for another day. We could probably do a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's all I have to say on Mercedes.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much wrapped it up there with Mercedes. Yeah, the big points, of course. She is now all elite and possibly, probably the highest paid woman in all of wrestling. So how about we take a quick break here before we go into the other changes to the tier list for this week? We're going to be talking about Mickie James, Max Caster, Shelton Benjamin, and Seth Rollins coming up here. You're listening to the WrestleWatch podcast. Hey, everybody. That was a nice little break there. We are back to the WrestleWatch podcast. This is Ryan.
And I'm Doug.
And we would love to get into the changes to the tier list, the WrestleWatch Wrestler Movement Probability tier list, whatever you want to call it. We last week's episode, we went through every single name on the tier list. We kind of set up for you what to expect with each one of these tiers. As a reminder, the tier list is kind of the representation, the likelihood that somebody is going to sign with a new company from their current company or promotion or from their free agency. So the companies that we're looking at, again, just as a reminder, are AEW, New Japan, Ring of Honor, Stardom, TNA, WWE. And just as a reminder, again, when we're looking at the S tier, it's the people that are imminently going to be signing somewhere new. C is about 50-50, and F is, well, hey, we got to put them on the list. And there's one of those people that we just added this week. But first, I wanted to talk about somebody that we took off the tier list, and that was Mickie James.
All right. Yes, Mickie James. She moved from the D tier to being taken off completely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the main reason for this is just because at this point, she is now working for OVW. She's the
Mm-hmm.
head, she's a creative director, head of female talent, and an executive producer. So, real quick, Ryan, do you want to just kind of explain OVW for the people who are unfamiliar?
Yeah, OVW, it's been a few things over time there. Ohio Valley Wrestling, it used to be a feeder promotion for WWE back before they did Florida Championship Wrestling, which became NXT officially. In the aughts there, in the teens, so in the aughts, it was an unaffiliated promotion. Back in 2011, it became a territory for Impact Wrestling, but they've stopped that relationship. So now it's back to being its own separate thing. The people there that some people might know is Al Snow, is one of the people that runs the company and owns it. So yeah, that's OVW in a nutshell.
Yeah. So based off of that, it doesn't look like she's going to be jumping anywhere at this time, or at least long term. She seems to be, settled in there. I don't know that we necessarily see any companies clamoring for her. She hasn't indicated that she's going to be jumping anywhere. I mean, it may happen. I mean, that OVW role isn't necessarily going to be a permanent thing.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know if what her passions are, what her drive is at this point in her career, but at this point, I think it's pretty comfortable to say that we can go ahead and keep her off the list unless we hear otherwise. And I think that's
Yeah,
what all the voters thought as well in the committee.
yeah, that's essentially how we are looking at it. Because OVW, even though it is its own clear promotion, it is kind of an indie at the current moment, and it's historically been developmental as a territory. So, yeah, if anything changes with her, of course we will be keeping an eye on that. But at the current moment, we're not going to be having her on the tier list. But transition, then we have essentially replaced her on the tier list with somebody else. We've added somebody to the tier list this week. That would be one Max Caster. He joins the tier list down at the F tier. So yeah, Doug, what exactly is going on with Max?
Max Caster is a situation where we are just speculating, and I think the committee is speculating as well, that he may just get himself into too much hot water that the company may have to cut him. I don't think there's necessarily any thoughts that he's going to jump right away, jump in the sense that he's going to leave and go to another company right off the bat, and that's what's pushing him, but more so that he might get fired, but he would still end up elsewhere just because he seems to be a pretty strong talent. But what's
Mm-hmm.
going on right now is he has been playing up his character a little bit much in social media and rubbing people the wrong way to the point where he is coming off a bit of a misogynist. The
Yeah,
most recent tweet, where he was insulting someone uh, and reference International Women's Day and saying that he was, quote unquote, acting like a woman, um, which, obviously very misogynistic comment. And on top of that, he, and this is, could be us just reading into it, but as soon as Mercedes Moné tweeted out that she was in Boston, he tweeted out a picture of himself with Sammy Guevara, who very famously, had some very negative things and very awful comments in regards to Mercedes Moné
yeah,
on a podcast long before, early on in AEW's. It might have been around 2019, 2020,
yeah. It
and they were
was,
cool. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It was like 2020, I believe, because I think it was during the pandemic era
yeah.
that he was suspended for his comments that he made about Mercedes. So and Max Caster has also had a history of suspensions due to the content of his raps. Again, oddly enough, about misogynistic comments, such as making, I believe it was in the same rap, he made a joke about the Duke lacrosse team and very odd comment about Julia Hart. So,
Well, the Julia Hart ones were reoccurring like over
mhm.
and over again. And those I don't even know if he necessarily got in trouble for, but the one that he definitely got suspended for was actually the Simone Biles comment, where he
Oh yeah.
made a joke about her, pulling out due to mental health.
Yeah, and that
Um,
was I believe that was on like the Fight for the Fallen special, which is supposed to be a charity show for, I think
this
I
the
think the
Simone
basis of it was like women's rights kind of stuff.
well, the Simone Biles one, I remember this for sure. This happened on a dark because I remember specifically people tweeting out video of that as it was recorded. So because that one didn't happen live.
Hmm.
Um, but people tweeted out, cell phone recording of that rap. And I remember a lot of people were saying, like, there's no way this one's gonna make air. They're gonna pull this one. And it made air. Like it was up on the dark. And I was like, wow, I'm surprised that one went through. And then afterwards, I remember Tony Khan like was very upset with that, and then felt like he needed to take more control of the situation and review all this stuff, which I understand, obviously, because that was an awful thing to say in a rep. So
Hmm.
I'll say this, and I'm not defending Castor at all, but he's going to continue to kind of have these issues because his gimmick has become, I'm going to say shock things in these raps. And
Yeah.
I don't. So he has essentially created this character that likes to fly close to the sun, and that's a very dangerous thing to do. I understand that that's sort of what got them over, but he needs to figure this out. And he needs to, maybe I don't need to know if he needs to be on social media at this point. Um, but but it's just this is he's crossing the line. He definitely crossed the line here, and I think he needs to understand that. If he's not understanding that, he's gonna get himself in trouble, and that's why he's at F tier right now.
Yeah, and just because I was just trying to make sure I was getting that because I remembered something about Fight for the Fallen, and you were right, it was on Dark, but it was the Dark that was filmed at Fight for the Fallen.
Okay. Yes.
And it was filmed in Charlotte, North Carolina, where he made the jokes there. Yeah, it was. I've not been hot on Max Caster personally for a while, just because of all these things. But he's been doing a pretty good job in AEW, I think,
Yeah.
since the dark days, and meaning AEW dark
Yeah.
days.
And I'll say this, like they're not on the Acclaimed are not on the tier chart at all, but
Correct.
completely separate of Max Caster and his comments. I do feel like the Acclaimed have kind of peaked in AEW. I don't know that they're going to necessarily be more than what they are. They won the titles once. I don't expect them to be, you know, suddenly becoming, all in main eventers as a tag team. I think they are what they are. And I think the act might fit better in a company like WWE personally. So they're an act that I would not be surprised that when their contracts are due, that we start looking at having. I could
Yeah,
see them being added to the tier chart just in terms of negotiations, because I think WWE might be interested in them, but that's a discussion maybe for another day.
yeah, I totally agree about your assessment of all that. And well, one of the people that Max mentioned in one of these tweets was Shelton Benjamin, who's on our tier list and just moved up from C tier to B tier. Max Caster's tweet was, I believe, "We don't want him," in reaction to an article that was saying that Shelton Benjamin said, going to AEW is in their court. The ball is in their court, was the direct quote from Shelton about the possibility of joining AEW. So, Doug, what's been the change this week with Shelton Benjamin that's brought him up from C to B tier?
Yeah, well, here's the thing, and first of all, that comment from Caster, I think that was probably him just being in kayfabe. I don't think he was. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think he was like generally saying like anything negative about Shelton Benjamin. I think he was just trying to be. I mean, I think he was just working.
I think he was working too. It seemed like that there were some people, other wrestlers, other talent in AEW that didn't think that he was, or necessarily because they then responded to him and said, "No, we like Shelton."
Yeah, I could be wrong, maybe. So we'll see. But in terms of Shelton Benjamin, he moved up because of those comments. But he was on C tier already because there were reports that there were people within AEW pushing for him to
Mhm.
join the company. We had, specifically John Moxley was really pushing for him.
Yeah.
And I think that he is someone that I absolutely could see kind of filling a role similar to Matt Sydal or
Mhm.
Jay Lethal or Jeff Jarrett, who's someone who's not necessarily going to get a push, but is someone who's going to, be there to, kind of push younger talent. And frankly, if I'm being completely honest, one thing that I think AEW could really benefit from is having more veterans that are taking pinfalls, because I think one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of the people who are, getting, getting necessary used as pin fodder, I guess you could say, and getting taking falls a lot to kind of push other people are a lot of the younger talent. And I think it would do really good if they had some more veteran names that
Mhm.
are in there that are just there to, take pinfalls like Matt Sydal. I think Matt Sydal is like used perfectly in the company. Like they
Yeah.
could use him more to like lose more. I would be fine with that. I think they need more people like that. And I think Shelton would fill that role very, very well.
Yeah, I think that there are a couple people in AEW right now that fill that role. I think Jeff Jarrett is another one. Jay Lethal kind of fills that role as well. But it's never a bad thing to have people that are solid hands, that are good hands to do that kind of a thing.
Yeah. I think
Um,
I think even Chris Jericho is slowly going that way. Um,
yeah, he is, and he loses a lot though nowadays, so it's kind of giving the sheen off of him a little bit, I think, for Jericho.
yeah.
Now I wasn't as hot about moving Shelton Benjamin up just because I think that even though I um do agree and value this viewpoint of that he could be used in this kind of capacity in AEW, I think though that his best bet I think that the best usage for him could be going to a slightly smaller promotion, but being slightly higher on the card and going to somewhere like a TNA and being able to showcase his talents there as well, a little bit higher on the card. Uh, yeah, that's my personal taste on the situation. I think that he has a lot to offer.
I think he does, but I also think how old is he at this point?
Let me quick
Yeah,
look
because
that one up.
he's in his 40s for sure.
He is 48.
He's 48, and I think
Yeah.
at this point, I think more often than not, I would imagine that I know that Impact can or TNA, so TNA can throw some money around at a couple people for sure. But I
Mhm.
think even in a lower card role that he would be in AEW, I think he's more likely going to make a lot more money in AEW.
Yeah.
And I imagine that at this point in his career, that's probably he's going to be his priority to just try to get
Mhm.
like a one final payday.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, even though he'd probably be used a little bit higher on the card in TNA, I could see him going. I think AEW would probably be the most likely landing spot for him.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And I think that we have one more person that has moved on the tier list, and I think we have enough time before doing a break just to talk about him a little bit. It's Seth Rollins. He was in B tier and he's moving down to C tier. What was the reasoning for Seth Rollins moving right now?
I'll be honest, I always felt that he was kind of high on the list.
Mhm.
And I think recently he made comments where he was asked about his contract situation, and he said that he anticipates that that he anticipates that him and WWE will come to terms of an agreement, they'll come to terms on a contract.
Mhm.
And I think and here's the thing, Seth Rollins is an interesting one. And later on in the show, we're going to go ahead and talk about, you know, specifically six other people in addition to Seth Rollins in WWE that I think are in very interesting situations that can kind of go either way. Um, but the thing with him is he has a lot. I think he has a lot of. There's a lot of reasons why he could jump. There's a lot
Yeah.
of reasons why he could go to AEW that make a lot of sense.
Mhm.
But there's also a situation where when you think about I would like to say like 90% of these things are going to come down to money. He very well may be like the 10% that does not. He may be very happy in WWE. His wife is there. And I think based off of those comments of him just saying that he thinks him and AEW and WWE, I'm sorry, him and WWE are going to come to terms. I think that, um, I think that's very likely.
Yeah, and with him, it kind of gets in that zone that we were talking about before at the top of the show about the new additions at AEW. We're looking at Osprey, Okada, and Moné. Uh, I think that he fits similar to where Mercedes is at her point in her career with WWE of, well, what else is there to do here? And it could be more lucrative or more interesting for him, or possibly a better schedule for him to go somewhere else and get a little bit more money, possibly too. Um,
I think that aspect of it is going to be the most important and most interesting thing in terms of will AEW be a bigger money spot, landing spot for Seth Rollins?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I don't
and
know. Will WWE spend more money than AEW on him? Because all the people we've seen are free agents. I don't
mhm.
know how well WWE is going to play defense on some of these people.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier in the week in chat, that I feel that WWE going forward, when we're looking at the crop of people that are coming up from NXT. Specifically, there was a lot of discussion about right when Mercedes, yay, Wednesday. What does this mean going forward for women's wrestling? Um, one of the interesting things was talking about the women that are down in NXT right now and how they look really great, and that a lot of them were people that had previously worked either in AEW proper or had been booked on Dark, and then Tony Khan just didn't sign them. WWE then comes in and says, "Hey, do you want to work NXT? NXT 2.0 is about to start up." And now all of those women are showing great promise, I would say. Blair Davenport is one of the people that came up, who was previously known as Bea Priestley in AEW and on the independents. And I think that the strategy might be for WWE is to look at those younger people as they keep on keeping on with Roman at the top of the card and try to develop some of those people right now. And it might not be for them to look at somebody like Seth Rollins and say, well, I mean, you've been a big thing for us, but, we have to look long term coming up here. And you're getting a little bit older in age. I think he's around, 40 something right now. So there's a couple names, though, that are kind of similar to that, I think, right? With Seth Rollins, of who is going to be valuing them more between WWE and other places, right?
Yeah, I actually call this group the Magnificent Seven. I don't know. Should we take a break before I go into this though?
Yeah. How about we take a break? We'll be right back with the WrestleWatch podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to the WrestleWatch podcast. I'm Ryan here, and that is Doug over there.
Hello.
Real quickly, we just wanted to run through the who is on the tier list currently. This is a reminder for people before we get into this magnificent seven, this mysterious magnificent seven that Doug wanted to talk about.
Yep. So this is the updated list as of March 16th when we're recording this.
Yeah, so up in the S tier, which is a reminder, is the ones that we think are imminently going to be switching and signing to a new promotion. We have the wrestler formerly known as Black Taurus. I think right now I think that he's going to be debuting his new name as Black Beast. I think I read that. Camille and Tamatonga. Down on A tier, it's Mustafa Ali, Julia, and Tekla. Those are the ones that we think will be moving fairly soon. We're not certain about it as much as we are about the S tier. B tier, of course, is one less level of certainty. On this tier, we have Dustin Rhodes, Leo Rush, Sheamus, Jacob Fatu, Suri, Grizzled Young Veterans, Mike Santana, and the newly additioned up Shelton Benjamin. Do you want to take C tier there?
Yeah, let me pull it up.
Oh, well, then I'll take C tier because I see it right
I'll let
now.
you just go through it all.
C tier is 50-50 tier. It could be equal odds of them leaving or staying with their current promotion. We got Ricky Starks, Wardlow, Sami Callihan, Kevin Owens, Kaito Kiyomiya, words, Katsuhiko Nakajima, Finn Balor, Suzu Suzuki, and the new addition to C tier coming down from B is Seth Rollins. Down in D tier, we have Cody Rhodes, Malachi Black, Buddy Matthews, Matt Cardona, Becky Lynch, and Drew McIntyre. And then down F tier, which is we have to keep them on the list. There could be something here, could happen. Jack Perry, MJF, Suri, El Fantasmo, Daniel Garcia, and the new addition, Max Caster. Now, I believe that a few of those names, I think that one or two of them might be on the Magnificent Seven of yours. Is that correct?
Yep, a couple of them, and a few of them are not. But what I'm going to go ahead and go over right now is what I call my Magnificent Seven. I have dubbed this for a while now. This is a couple months going, where I've been looking at seven people that are currently in WWE that I think are very possible jumps to AEW, or at least the ones that I think are worth discussing. And the reason I'm looking at these are for a couple reasons. Some just because I think that they're not being utilized as well as they could be in WWE, but also sometimes it just I think it depends on who values them more. And when you're looking at these jumps, I think you need to start by looking at who is going to value this talent more. Is it going to be AEW or is it going to be WWE? And then once you figure that out, if you think it's AEW that's going to value them more, you need to ask yourself, is AEW willing to pay them what they are valued? If
Mm-hmm.
that answer is yes, then there's a good chance that they're probably going to jump, unless WWE is just willing to overpay in order to keep them away. And with all these names, I don't know the answer to that question. We have not seen how WWE is going to be playing defense because they didn't
Mm-hmm.
play defense with Adam Copeland, the former Edge. Uh, I don't know if they're going to play defense with a lot of these names.
Yeah.
And if they're willing, if the talent is willing to go where the money goes and aren't willing to take a pay cut to stay where they're at, they very well may be jumping.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the seven names that are on my Magnificent Seven. The first one is going to be Seth Rollins. The second one is going to be Drew McIntyre. Then Finn Balor, AJ Styles, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Sheamus. These are
Okay.
these are seven people in WWE right now on the men's roster. I kind of kept it to the men's roster. The women's is a separate thing. But these seven names I think are people that I could absolutely see AEW throwing money at that maybe could be a large enough amount that WWE would just let them go. Now,
Okay.
yeah. So
Oh
those are
no,
my names.
yeah, you go ahead with your next point there.
So I just want to kind of go through these. So Seth
Yeah.
Rollins,
Yes.
he's obviously the world heavyweight champion, but the problem right now is I I think he's kind of pigeonholed where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of people kind of look at the title as not as important as it could be. And in a lot of ways, I see Seth Rollins in WWE the same way a lot of people saw Cody Rhodes in AEW, where he was just kind of stuck. He wasn't going to break through, but once he jumped, he broke through in a huge way. And I
Yeah.
think he's someone that if he did jump to AEW, he could break through in the same way Cody broke through in WWE. The
Okay.
question is, will he want to? I don't know.
Okay.
His contract is coming up supposedly, I think, in June. And that I absolutely believe that Tony Khan would love to have a triumphant Tyler Black return.
Mm-hmm.
So he's one that I think is going to be interesting to watch. He's currently at C tier,
Yes.
and it's because I don't know whatever his mindset is. Is he someone who's willing? Would he take less money to stay in WWE? Especially if his wife wants to stay there or along those lines, or if uh you know if he just is comfortable. That's
Mm-hmm.
obviously a case too. So I don't know.
Yeah. And how about could you go through your questions there that you had of the things that we should be thinking about when trying to assess the likelihood of movement? So for Seth Rollins, what was your first question prompt there?
Sure. So this is something I kind of call like my flow chart,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, where I just need to decide, especially when I'm looking at whether a talent is going to go uh, to AEW or WWE.
Yeah.
So the first question I always ask, who is the talent more valuable to? Is it going
Okay.
to be AEW or is it going to be WWE? So if I take a look at Seth Rollins,
Yeah.
I would say he's probably at this point more valuable to AEW. I think that he would be a much more hyped up wrestler. I think that he would be seen as a major big deal, instant top player in the company.
Mhm.
Whereas in WWE, I don't know that they would even necessarily miss him.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, like right now, as I think we talked about this last week, the World Heavyweight Championship is kind of booked at the same tier as the Intercontinental belt.
yeah,
So it doesn't even feel like he's the world champion.
yeah, and even when we were looking at some of those that build up to WrestleMania, where they had the press conference, where they had Seth Rollins, Cody, uh,
The
Roman
Rock and
Reigns,
Roman,
and the
yeah,
and the Rock. It's like Seth just felt so out of place. It
yeah,
was such a, one of these things is not like the other situation with him. It was very, very apparent that he is
yeah.
just not on their level in that company right now.
Gotcha. And then what's the second question then on your flow chart? Now that we've established that it's possible that AEW might value Seth more.
So the next question would then be, is that promotion willing to pay him or her comparable to their overall value? So
Hmm.
if we acknowledge that AEW values them more, the next question is, are they willing to pay them what they're valued? Because there are
Gotcha.
situations where, take a look at TNA. They
Hmm.
probably would have they really, really valued CM Punk.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like they were going to. Didn't they actually bring in Ace Steel even?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they brought in a Steel, and then they were going to make him an offer. They made him an offer, but it
yeah,
maybe just wasn't what he was truly valued, and because they just probably couldn't pay him what he was valued.
yeah.
So, in that situation, is AEW willing to pay what he's truly valued? For example, we just saw it with Mercedes. I
Yeah.
think along with this flow chart, you can kind of do the same thing. Who valued Mercedes more? I think it's very obvious that AEW valued Mercedes more than WWE did, just from
Oh yeah.
everything we've heard, all the reports, the discussions that Mercedes, wanted the same pay that Becky and Charlotte were getting, and AEW
Yeah.
was just not willing to do that. And AEW, and in turn, paid her more than what Charlotte and Becky are making. She is now the highest paid woman in wrestling. So
Yeah.
in that situation, AEW valued her more and was willing to pay her uh, what she was valued.
Yeah. And then with Seth, you think that AEW would be willing to pay more than WWE is willing to pay.
I do. I think that
Yeah.
they would. I think that the value is there. I think that they. I think Tony Khan, being Tony Khan, I think he would love to have Tyler Black versus John Moxley. I think he values that.
Hmm.
He would love to have Tyler Black versus Will Ospreay, Tyler Black versus Kenny Omega, Tyler Black versus Takeshita. These
Yeah.
are things that Tony Khan would love to book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that the second or last question on your
That was
flow?
the second question. So
Okay.
then the the next questions you need to then ask are kind of like along they go along with this. And the next one is, if we believe that AEW in this situation would pay more,
Hmm.
would pay what he's valued, I should say. So we think AEW would pay what he's valued, will the other promotion, in this case WWE, pay more than he or she is valued in order to get him and keep them away from the other promotion? So
Gotcha.
we understand that AEW would pay more. And this is the big question. This is honestly just the biggest question we have in terms of how WWE is going to operate. Are they going to pay a lot to just keep these people away from AEW? Will they
Yeah.
play defense? I don't know
Yeah.
the answer. In this
Yeah.
situation, I don't think so.
I think it's possible with Seth Rollins that they might play defense. When I look at him compared to the rest of the names on this Magnificent Seven, simply due to the history of Seth Rollins in WWE, his relation to their top dog, and wanting to possibly maybe if they're trying to keep Becky Lynch around, make her happy by keeping the other half of the couple there around. I don't think it's as likely for the other people on this list that WWE would do that counteroffer as I think it might happen with Seth Rollins. That's my
Yeah.
personal view.
Well, and then that's where we get to our last question on my flowchart. And
Hmm.
this is where I think that we may see Seth stay. And
Okay.
that question is, will the wrestler take less than he is valued to go to the other promotion? And in this case, WWE. So would he take less money to stay in WWE than what AEW has offered? I think he might.
Yeah.
So even if AEW offered Seth Rollins more money, I think there's a good chance that he would stay in WWE for less money. And
Yeah.
that's where I am. I don't necessarily think that WWE is going to outbid AEW, but I
Hmm.
think that there's a chance that, and we've already seen this with Osprey, Okada, and Mercedes, that they're pushing we are the bigger company, we're the biggest company in the world. You're going to have your WrestleMania moments. We're going to put you on a higher pedestal. You're going to have more a lot more visibility with us.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to continue to push that because I do not think, especially as a publicly traded company, that they want to start blowing up their labor budget. Because
Yeah.
as a publicly traded company, once they blow up that labor budget, you're going to look at a situation where the stock price is going to be impacted. And they
Hmm.
right now don't want to do that.
Yeah. And that kind of leads us into our next person on your Magnificent Seven is Drew McIntyre. Now, of course, Drew had left WWE at one point, had a fantastic run in TNA, I thought,
Yeah.
and kind of leveled himself up to that he returned in 2017, got the NXT Championship, went up to the main roster 2018, won the Royal Rumble, won the championship, and the pandemic kind of soured things a little bit for that run. Of course, a lot of people would love to see Drew have another big run. They think that he's, worth it and can do that, command that kind of run. He is 38 years old now, so he's slightly on the older edge of the should we resign this person kind of dichotomy. So what were your thoughts about Drew McIntyre?
So I'll just go through the flow chart with him. So the
Hmm.
first question, who is this talent more valuable to, AEW or WWE? Genuinely, I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because I don't know how badly AEW wants Drew. I
Yeah.
don't know that I don't think he is perceived as the biggest difference maker and a big star in the same way that Seth Rollins would be. I
Yeah.
think he's probably on the same level as an Adam Copeland.
Hmm.
So because of that, I don't know that they're necessarily going to value him more. WWE might value him more. I don't think either one is necessarily going to value him as much as they value Seth Rollins or Tyler Black.
Gotcha.
Um, now, so that alone, so I could pretty much stop the flowchart there because I don't know where he would go, because I don't know if they're willing to pay him what they're valued. I don't know. And
Gotcha.
I think that's on it, but I will say this. I think that's why he's been such a weird, fun one to watch, where he's been kind of outspoken. It's very clear that he's trying to do the leverage game and use AEW and WWE against each other. He's
Yeah.
been refusing to sign contracts because he's trying to build up his value, which is exactly what he should be doing. I just don't know how much the fight is between him right now. So, but based off of that, I'm kind of leaning towards he's gonna stay.
Hmm.
And I think right now he's on D tier on the tiered list, right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that means he's leaning towards staying. The committee thinks he's leaning towards staying.
Yeah.
So
And I
I
think
I
that's
I
yeah,
agree.
I think that's the case when you look at how his booking has changed since the reports came out that his contract was supposed to have been up in January. So and in the meantime after that, well, now it looks like he's gonna have a world heavyweight championship match at WrestleMania. So it's I suppose that's an improvement for him. That's a big improvement. The question is if that's the strategy by WWE trying to get him to stay, or what's going on there.
Yeah, and I think it's a very good chance that he got that because he's been playing hardball. So good for him.
Yeah. Next up is somebody that we might have to mention another promotion when we discuss
Yes.
the chances of him leaving. We're talking about Finn Balor, the former Prince Devitt of New Japan. He has been with WWE for the past couple of years here. He is 42 years old, and he's been having some fun in WWE as part of the Judgment Day.
Yeah, I don't think he's necessarily used badly in WWE. I think
Hmm.
that he definitely could have been used better. He's had a very rocky run in WWE, just marred by injuries and weird booking and just strange situations in general. But for the most part, I think he's positioned well. Judgment
Yeah.
Day is obviously a very popular act in WWE, but it does seem like he is a little bit limited. I think he could be a main event player and just isn't right
Yeah.
now. So um when you take a look uh at Finn Balor, I think we going through the tier the flow chart. Who is the talent more valuable to? AEW or WWE?
Mm.
Would say AEW. Now, the
I would.
reason I'm
Yeah.
going to say that, and here, would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, and I think you're going to say the same reason why I think so. So go on.
Yeah, I would argue that the reason he is going to be more valuable to uh to AEW is very simple. And that simple reason is that he has built-in stories in AEW as well as New Japan.
Hmm.
He is the original leader of the Bullet Club.
Yeah.
And when you look at AEW right now, they have Kenny Omega, they have Jay White, and they still have these connections to uh, New Japan, and they
Yeah.
are already working with them. The return of Prince Devitt to professional wrestling would be a huge story, especially to the people who enjoy AEW in New Japan. That is a bigger deal than anything he could possibly do in Judgment Day.
Yeah.
And I do believe that AEW understands that. And I think that they would pay him what he is valued. So
Hmm.
that answers the second question too. Is the promotion willing to pay him or her comparable to their overall value? So I would say yes.
Yeah,
Now, yeah,
I think that's the case. Yeah.
yeah,
I totally agree.
yeah. Now the third question, will the other promotion pay more than he or she is valued in order to get him or her to keep them away from the other promotion? I don't think so. I think that WWE, honestly, if you take a look at Judgment Day, if you really want my honest opinion, I think that of the four people in Judgment Day right now, being Dom, Rhea Ripley, Damian Priest, and Finn Balor, I think that they see Finn Balor as the least important person of that group.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And because of that, I don't think that they would fight to try to keep him. They would let him go because they see Damian Priest as a potential breakout star. Rhea Ripley is obviously I would argue they're probably their biggest women's star right now.
Yeah, definitely.
I think she's
Definitely.
higher than Becky, at least right now.
Hmm.
And Dom is obviously a very, very overact that is, extremely popular with the WWE fan base. And I think that they're going to be pushing him for decades to come, more likely than that.
Yeah.
And then it just comes down to, is Finn Balor so comfortable in WWE that he's willing to take less money to stay there? He might.
Hmm.
He might. I don't know. That's the one area where I don't know. But
Yeah.
based off of the flow chart, I would not be stunned at all to see him jump.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing with the Judgment Day part of it is whether or not they would want to keep them together for a while going forward, because they are they're the biggest group in WWE right now that's not related to Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
So I could see a world where if if the merch sales and other things like that are so high for Judgment Day, that maybe they'll want to keep him and Judgment Day overall together and around. Um, but I do see that there could be value for AEW and for New Japan in wanting to have Finn Prince Devitt come back. Hey everybody, it is Editor Ryan here with a little bit of a note. Doug messaged me right after we finished recording this episode of the WrestleWatch podcast to make sure that I put this out there. We forgot about JD McDonough being a member of Judgment Day, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, considering that, he's the newest member of Judgment Day. He's being set up as the young lion of the group that might perhaps maybe go over on Finn Balor if and when Finny Boy leaves WWE. And I mean, come on, his initials are the same as Judgment Day's initials. He's Judgment Day McDonough. It's right there. So yeah, we totally missed the ball on that one. And Doug also wanted me to mention that he does not think that Finn Balor is less important than the Judgment Day. He wanted me to say it. What I will say also on this subject is that it's hard to talk about Judgment Day and not give praise to the highs that some of the members are having right now. When you look at Rhea Ripley, who's the world champion and really should be headlining WrestleMania, and you look at
Damian Priest, Mr. Money in the Bank. You look at Dominic Mysterio being Dominic Mysterio. And how can we forget the most important member of Judgment Day? Not JD, Judgment Day McDonough. I'm talking about R Truth, Ronald Killings. Oh man, he's my favorite member of Judgment Day. You know what? This editorialization is dedicated to R Truth. We'll be right back in 1 second here.
And our next person kind of has a few of the similar notes there, right? We're
Yeah.
talking about AJ Styles.
Yeah, AJ Styles, another former Bullet Club leader, has a lot of connections to New Japan, has a lot of connections to the people in AEW, was really good friends with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Um, However, I do think he's a little bit different from Finn Balor in the sense that I think AJ Styles feels very comfortable in WWE. He's been pushed
Mm-hmm.
well, presented well throughout his career there. And I think just culturally he fits better in WWE. I think he likes the environment, the climate there. He's always come across as like this was my end goal. This is where I want to be. I could see him eventually being someone who just wants to agent in WWE. And as
Yeah.
he's kind of winding down his career full time, I don't necessarily see him jumping.
Mm.
So having said that, do I think AEW would value him more? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that he is more valuable to AEW than WWE. I think he would make a much bigger difference. Do I think that AEW would pay him what he's valued? I don't know.
I don't know about that part. Yeah. Um, yeah, like when you look at Uncle Al there, he has lots of friends in AEW. He's got, Christopher Daniels is one of his best friends also, for that matter. He was allegedly supposed to debut at the first episode of Dynamite was supposed to be him and the Good Brothers.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
so it's possible that he might, finagle over. But
Wait, hang on, wait. Was AJ Styles supposed to be with on the first
was
Dynamite?
it was it supposed to be him or just the Good
I
Brothers?
think it was just supposed to be the Good Brothers, and the Good Brothers took the deal and went to WWE. Because I think he was in WWE since like 2016.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know what?
So he didn't, yeah. So that
Yeah,
wasn't, yeah. So that just, yeah. But it was supposed to be the Good Brothers, and I do think. I mean, I don't really need to go through much more of the list, the flow chart with him. I think he's someone I think I'm keeping an eye on, but I don't know that I necessarily see him jumping. I don't know that AEW. I think he would be more valuable to AEW, but I don't know that WWE is going to prioritize him. And frankly,
yeah,
I think he's definitely someone who would be happy to take a little less money and stay in WWE.
yeah. Well, how about we talk about then the next person on your list here is Kevin
I
Owens.
want to talk about the next two together.
That makes sense.
So the next two are Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, because I think my thought process with them is exactly the same.
Hmm.
And just to get this out of the way, first of all, I understand that Kevin Owens and does not get along with CM Punk. Neither does Seth Rollins. I do not think that factors in to their decision. I know some people do. I don't. I think they're professionals, and that doesn't that I don't think that matters that much.
Gotcha.
Um, so with these two, knowing that they are a tag team, knowing who their history with the Young Bucks, and knowing their history in a Ring of Honor,
Hmm.
do I think that AEW would value? Do I think that they are more valuable to AEW than I think they're valuable to WWE? And I'm saying this even understanding what these two have accomplished in WWE over the last, year or two alone, let alone their entire career. Do I think they're more valuable to AEW? Absolutely.
Mm.
I think
Okay.
it's without a question. They would be way more valuable to AEW. The return of Kevin Steen. I don't know if they would necessarily go back to El Generico, but
Probably not.
especially, no, probably not, but especially with like AEW's tag division, especially even though I think that tag division's kind of decreased a little bit, less focus on it. They still are probably the promotion that focuses on tag wrestling the most. Um, I think that would be a no-brainer. I mean, imagine Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus FTR versus the Young Bucks versus, I don't know, potentially Adam Copeland and Christian Cage versus uh, you know, any other tag teams they may bring in. I
Mhm.
mean, that to me is that's a no-brainer. I think they'd be more valuable there. Now, do I think that Tony Khan and AEW would pay what they're valued? Yes, I do.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
he tried to sign them, right?
yeah,
Well,
at
they
least he
did.
tried to sign Kevin Owens. He said, I would have
Yes.
paid Kevin Owens, but it sounded like maybe they didn't even talk, or maybe they
Mhm.
did a little bit. But I mean, they definitely used him for leverage, and Kevin Owens got a payday. I don't
Yes.
know about Sami Zayn. I don't know when his contract is up or when he was due or when he last resigned, but I could see that change happening.
Yeah.
Now, will
Go
the
ahead.
other promotion will WWE pay more than they think they're valued in order to keep them? I don't. I really
Mhm.
don't. I really don't think WWE would pay to keep Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. Um, do I think that they would take less money to stay in AEW and stay in WWE? Honestly, I don't. These
Yeah.
I'm not focusing too much on these yet just because I don't know when their contracts are up. Um,
Yeah. I believe Kevin Owens is up in late 2024. They both resigned to I think they both resigned together in 21,
yeah,
if memory serves.
I will be honest. I kind of lean towards these guys jumping. I think it's too early to really do some serious thought on the tier chart with them.
Gotcha.
Um, but I do think that I could see them jumping together. That makes too much sense for me. I think that AEW would pay for them. They're both family guys, so they would like to have, I think, the lighter schedule as well. Makes too much sense. I think they're gone.
Yeah, and I was able to find that currently the reported figure that Kevin Owens is being paid right now is 2 to 3 million per year
I think
in WWE,
I don't think that WWE is going to
and it was a 3 year
increase.
deal.
I don't
Yeah,
think they're going to increase that, first of all,
yeah,
at the very least. And to be honest, they may try to lowball them even more. So
yeah,
that alone, I think, right. I just do not see them fighting to keep him. So I don't know if AEW would top that, but I definitely don't know that I see a WWE increasing that. So, and I do think
yeah,
I think AEW would want him. I think
yeah,
that would happen.
yeah. I think that when we're looking at just the price of contracts that have happened since then, since 2021 when he resigned, um, I can't see a world where, and also for that matter, um, the change in the ownership of WWE in the past 3 years. I'm not sure if the new ownership at WWE would be wanting to pay $3 or $4 million for Kevin Owens. I'm not sure if he's going to get that on his next deal. Period. But that's probably the range that he's going to be asking for from people. And I think that it's definitely possible to go through your flow chart that it's definitely possible that Tony Khan could look at him and say, yeah, you know what? I will pay you that because
Yeah,
I love you.
and I think I think that's the question right now is like how will WWE play defense? I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know that we'll see that yet. Well, I mean, we'll see it this year. We're gonna find out.
Yeah, we're gonna
But
find out. Yeah,
yeah,
and I think they kind of it's possible that they played some preventative measures with Charlotte Flair and Bailey
yeah,
back at the end of last year. But with this crop of men, yeah, definitely have not gotten to this point yet with the men's roster. I don't think.
yeah, I agree.
Um, and the final one is Sheamus. Sheamus, of course, has been in WWE for a number of years now. He is currently 46 years old, though. So he's getting a little bit higher in age. He's had a little bit of a renaissance, though, in these later years, specifically and especially with his work in the Intercontinental Championship scene.
Yeah. So here's the thing with Sheamus. I understand that there's been like all the talk of him and doing stuff on Twitter and what he deleted his Twitter, I think, recently.
Mhm, yeah,
And I don't put a whole lot of stock in that stuff because I could totally just be at work and I don't want to I waste time speculating that. I focus on my flow chart because I think that's the best way to kind of analyze these things.
yeah.
So, who is Sheamus more valuable to, AEW or WWE? I think
I,
AEW.
I think AEW, but I'm not so sure if how much they value him, which is the
I
next question.
that is yeah, I agree as well. Is the promotion willing to pay him or her comparable to their overall value? I don't know. I would
Mhm.
I think that WWE doesn't necessarily value him that much, especially to the point where I don't think they're going to be paying a whole lot more to keep him around. I think he's, in the latter half of his career, obviously at this point, even if he is having arguably the best matches of his career.
Mhm.
But I don't know how much they're going to fight for him.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think that AEW might pay him more, even if it isn't like a massive deal, just because I don't know that WWE is going to fight for him. So if it comes down to who's going to pay him more, I think AEW.
Yeah. Which leads to
Yeah, which leads to the third question. Will the other promotion pay more? So will WWE pay more than he or she is valued in order to get him to stay away from AEW? I don't.
I don't think so with Sheamus. No, not at this point of his career.
Yeah. Now,
I
will
think
Shane and then finally, will Sheamus take less money to stay in WWE? No.
I mean, probably not, considering that I think that even if AEW isn't necessarily interested in Sheamus, I think that there are plenty of other companies that will be.
And I'll be honest, I'll even take it a step further with him. If AEW was offering less money than WWE, I still think he might go to AEW.
Oh, really?
I don't discount that. I really don't. I think that there's a chance that he at this point just wants to be a little bit more creatively fulfilled. I don't
Mhm.
think that's the case for most of these people. I think a lot of these people are going to take the money. Sheamus is one where I could absolutely see him being, you know what, I made my money
Yeah.
and I'm going to go ahead and do something cool now, which is essentially, I mean, a lot of people say, like, okay, Copeland says that, but I think Copeland also just took the money. I think Copeland got paid.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like when you add up everything about Copeland and what was there waiting for him at AEW was, his best friend and some of the locals that he loves hanging out with, FTR.
Yeah, he was a
Yeah,
no-brainer,
yeah,
which is why we had him so high on the tier chart for so long.
yeah, it's like it's obvious with him that like even if it was about the money, he had so many other reasons to go to AEW. Sheamus though doesn't necessarily have that big of a level. Now there are some people that he has been close with over the years there, of course. But I don't think at the level of my neighbor and my best friend.
Yeah,
So I think that he's going to be a very interesting one in that case to me, because I do agree with your flow of that. I think he's more valued at this point in his career, not by WWE. I think he's more valued by AEW or TNA or at a lot of other places would value having Sheamus on their roster more than WWE might. And I think that they would definitely be willing to pay him more than WWE is. Like again, like look at TNA with they could put a big money offer out for one of these kinds of guys, I think. And I think that Sheamus is kind of fits that mold for them as well, in my opinion.
absolutely. And that's my Magnificent Seven. So those are
Yeah.
the seven men in WWE that I'm keeping an eye on going forward.
Okay. Well, we will definitely be keeping an eye on a few of them as they're currently on the tier list, and then the other ones, well, they might pop up before the year is over. We'll see how that goes. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover on this week's episode, Doug?
Nope, I think that was some good audio.
Oh, well, that's good because I love audio. And I love talking with you and chatting about the tier list. Next week, of course, we'll be back with more of the movements, looking at the free agency landscape in pro wrestling. We might have another feature segment next week. We'll figure it out. Until then, this has been Ryan and Doug, and we hope you have a good rest of your week there.